Digimon collectors are very hardcore, maybe more hardcore than Pokemon collectors. My interest in Digimon goes all the way back to the late 90s. And in school, you were either a Pokemon kid or a Digimon kid. I don't know why this happened. I mean, there's really no reason to like one or the other. There's no reason why people can't like both. But I always found myself being more of a Digimon kind of guy. I like their overall designs, their edginess, I don't know, the branching paths of evolution. Everything about Digimon really appealed to me. I dropped off Digimon in grade school when the anime no longer seemed interesting to me. I think it was about season 4 or so. 14 years later, when I was in grad school, for some reason I just got reinvested in Digimon. I think it was the video game Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth really pulled me back into the Digimon franchise. I realized how much I missed out on. I started focusing a lot of my free time on Digimon related content. I have multiple videos that focus on the Digimon video games, but something I got invested in 2020 was collecting Digimon related merchandise.
Check out all the cool stuff at Digimon.com and find out about Digimon the movie, coming to theaters October 6th.
There's so much infatuation in the world with Pokemon, but Digimon had a crazy amount of merch back in the day. Folders, manga, erasers, electronic talking Digimon, electronic Digivices, virtual pets. There were like marbles. They even had Digitops like Digimon Beyblades. They had Digimon playsets. They had video games, of course. There were even Digimon banks. I mean, come on. The crazy thing is, even outside of all these wacky merchandise things, there were many different toy lines, way, way more than you would ever remember or have you ever even seen before.
What's that?
Digimon, Digimon monsters, Digimon have more power.
Patamon, Gabumon,
Agumon, go!
Digimon, Digimon monsters, Digimon fights in evil.
Quagamon, Seedramon, Miramon, Grow!
Digimon, Digimon monsters.
Garurumon, Greymon, Digimon, Grow!
The Digimon adventure continues with Digimon action figures, trading cards too.
Digimon.
Each sold separately from Bandai.
And they had the minifigure line, the iconic transforming or digivolving Digimon figures, which became really popular due to the way that Digimon evolved compared to Pokemon. There was a Garurumon that transformed into a Were-Garurumon, a Terriermon that transformed into a Mega Gargomon. These were kind of like a signature for Digimon because it was something a little bit different that Pokemon couldn't really do. You couldn't really like take a Pikachu and evolve it into a Raichu. It just didn't really work. But because the way that Digimon were designed, they started off in a basic form and they kind of added elements on top, like the cliched straps, the guns, the hats, like the armor, everything like that. So that worked out super well. So my infatuation, although I didn't have them as a kid, Digimon released their Digimon minifigure toys in packs, which they called sets. And each set contained a certain amount of Digimon figures that were always the same. There was no gacha, no blind boxes at this point in time. Just the Digimon you saw were the ones that you got. And what was kind of cool about it, in the very beginning, the sets kind of released as the anime was airing, and roughly they coincided to specific Digimon that you may see in the anime series. So I thought this was a really cool way to kind of release the figures where they're relevant. Didn't turn into a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle thing where there was just all these figures for all these characters that didn't exist. They ran out of ideas, so they were mashing together genres and things like that. The figures directly correlate to Digimon from the show, and there are a ton of them. As soon as I refound them later in life, I knew it was going to be a problem for me.
Gotta catch 'em all!
There are 58 sets of Digimon figures, and that's not counting a later series, re-releases, or anything along those lines. And the cool thing about it is because all of them were the same, there were no blind box elements, you can track back all the old sets and you can know the exact number of Digimon figures that exist. So from a collectability standpoint, that's pretty cool. Even the back of the packages back in the day, you could look at them and see what was in the set that you picked up, as well as a few other sets that are closely released to that set. I ended up buying huge lots of these figures on eBay and other selling platforms and just trying to build my collection. Originally, I had 0, so I was just trying to get the most bang for my buck and pick up as many of these figures as I possibly could. And after a while, I started getting duplicates, and the rarer and harder to come by Digimon figures ever eluded me. And some of them to this day, I still haven't been able to get a hold of.
That's the saddest story I ever heard. I'm the one with the problem, not you.
It's just a physical representation of the Digimon. And in the beginning, they were pretty high quality. The quality decreased over the years, but I find that the later season Digimon ones are just so much cooler because the thing about Pokemon is they always release the same characters. Eevee, Pikachu, Jigglypuff. Digimon does the same nowadays, but for these figures, it was like almost every Digimon in the beginning had a little minifigure. So even if you liked the really obscure Digimon, you could have a physical representation to bring to school with you, to put on your desk, to show your friends. I made a whole other video as well that was talking about all these Digimon minifigures, how they changed over the years, and how they even introduced kind of a blind box element in the later series that you could get random figures that were these silver and gold and platinum variants of specific Digimon figures. Another thing cool is that Digipedia.database also has a record of the mystery figures that were blind box that you could find with the later series of Digimon minifigures. And this is also the first time that people could actually figure out all the different possibilities that they could get. Agunimon, Lobomon, Kazemon, gold versions, silver versions, blue or red versions of Ancient Greymon, Kaiser Greymon, Magna Garurumon. The problem with these minifigures is, as I started to build this excessively long list of Digimon figures, what I realized is there are so many, and as they go on, they get rarer and rarer because there was probably just less and less released. And as you get into the later Digimon shows, I think there was less of a following in general, so therefore less figures were produced, sadly. And something caught my attention as I was collecting these. I wasn't originally keeping track of which ones existed. Now, as I start to research more and more, there are a few websites that keep coming up that have some kind of archival information about the Digimon minifigures. Wikimon is one of the main resources. It lists all the sets with all the Digimon names that appear, and it also just defines the Digimon collectible minifigure series as the set of PVC as the type of plastic, 1.5 inch scale minifigures. And this is also kind of up for debate. They always say this is a 1.5 inch Digimon line, but there are some that are significantly over that size and significantly under, especially as the series goes on. But for the most part, they all fall within that size. And it was cool for a while because they were all kind of like roughly in scale with each other. What I finally figured out, there were not actually 58 sets of Digimon minifigures in the original series. There were actually 61. There were people claiming that there was these extra sets that were not seen, especially in North America at the time. They contain Digimon from Digimon Frontiers. So what's really interesting actually is a lot of the Digimon followed the progression of the show. So at a certain point, the figures stop when the show is still in its early stages. And later Digimon, especially one of the core characters that gets introduced later into the franchise, doesn't have any figures related to it. And that's a real shame. But these figures do exist, but they never existed in North America. You can find online pictures of all the sets combined, and the packages for each of the sets. The only exceptions being set 59, 60, and 61. There are no package images available. So that's something that's even crazier. Were they ever sold in that same way? Were they sold in a box? Nobody really knows because there's no proof at this point of how they were originally sold.
I have a question for God. Why?
One of the only other resources we have is a website forum called withthewill.net, which was a Digimon forum. And you can basically see that back in 2018, there were a few people with multiple of these Digimon figures in their hands. I found out through a lot of different research that these figures were actually exclusive to Asia regions. Regions aside, Japan usually keeps their collectibles in very good physical condition. If you've ever collected video games or statues or anything like that, you'll find that sometimes buying the Japanese versions is much cheaper and much easier to find a clean version because Japanese people tend to keep their things in better shape, and especially their collectibles. However, for these 3 Digimon sets, it's still very, very difficult to find these figures from people that are willing to part with them. And the images, if you search the internet, you can do reverse image searches of the whole entire internet, and very few images of these figures show up really anywhere. Only a handful actually are high quality and are probably current owners of these figures. So the question is, who actually has these figures? How often do they trade hands? And how much would you even really have to pay to get your hands on these figures? As a person who likes to focus on certain things and collect things, I have the need to collect this entire set, although some of the figures are extremely rare. Now, I haven't even completed the North American set yet, but knowing that there are all these other figures out there that are extremely hard to find is frustrating, but also really interesting to track down. So I was able to be put in contact with a very good resource for Digimon figures online with the name of Rexanimon. We were able to piece together some information. This person has displayed all the Digimon minifigures on their Instagram page, and they do actually own sets 59, and they claim that they were offered at one point up to $5,000 for these Digimon minifigures. And although that may sound like a crazy amount of money, Digimon collectors are very hardcore, maybe more hardcore than Pokemon collectors. And if you don't believe me, be sure to check out Curtis Connor's video about the missing Digimon booster packs for the Digimon card game. Digimon collectors, they have less items produced. Pokemon is produced so heavily that even video games that go up in price have millions of units available, whereas Digimon, especially with the later series, just doesn't have that much out there. So if you want to find the items in this day and age, you're going to really have to pay up because the scarcity is really there. And the demand may be lower, but it still exists. Another factor of this search is I started searching on websites like eBay that you can look at previous sales to see if these things ever switch hands. And let me tell you, in the last 3 years, there's only been one recorded sale for the Digimon minifigures from these sets. And I was put off to this by one of my previous videos. Somebody contacted me and said, I have these 3 sets and I'm going to post them on eBay if you're interested. They send me the link. And I looked at it, and it was an auction, and it started off low, and I think it ended up going for like $800 to $1,000 USD. Very soon after that, the listing was reposted, which basically shows that the original buyer bid it up and didn't feel like actually paying that much, or they were just trying to artificially inflate the price of these figures. So it was something for me that gave me hope, because I was thinking, wow, these figures may actually be obtainable by myself sometime in the future. But then the second auction actually ended up selling for 4,000 USD. And there's proof of this here in this function that eBay has called TerraPeak, which lets you see sales from the last 3 years of eBay's history. There's no real confirmation that this was actually paid out, but after reaching back out to Rexanimon, they heard that these figures did trade hands fairly recently for thousands of dollars.
Money, 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 money.
These figures are out there, and Rexanimon has very kindly agreed to share high-resolution images of these Digimon minifigures for everyone to see. And I really want to just bring the awareness that these Digimon minifigures are out there, and they're some of the best ones, to be honest. Hey everyone, Future Shnickerman here. As I was editing this video, there was actually another instance of somebody posting on the internet with these figures, and the figures within question have to do with the Digimon Frontier figures, primarily Loimon, Petalldramon, and a few others, which I'll show here. And this was actually posted by a Reddit user, upstairs.1202, and they posted this on the r/Digimon Reddit. And why this is interesting, they were basically showing off their Digimon collection, and they were very proud of their Digimon Frontier Evolution setup. But I quickly saw that the rare Digimon figures were in here. Now, reading through the comments, I contacted the original poster and asked them if they could answer some questions for me, which I didn't get a reply, but they did answer some other people from the Reddit's questions and comments. They did mention that collecting the set would be very expensive for people that are interested, and that they've been assembling their collection for a number of years. The user specifically said that the Digimon figures that were not released in North America were very expensive, and they were able to acquire them from Hong Kong. So this at least gives us some more information that we didn't have before, that perhaps these figures were available in Hong Kong, or just the collectors of them got to Hong Kong. There's a huge fan base for these figures. I ended up picking up a 3D printer so I can actually print out Digimon that never had minifigures in the same scale that the original Digimon minifigures were in, and I can paint them and have them for my collection. It's a real shame that we couldn't get more of them. Bandai has recently been re-releasing some of the original minifigures, and I hope that someday we'll be able to see the final completion for North America for these Digimon minifigures, and maybe even produce more Digimon that we never saw in the original series. These are actually not the only lost Digimon figures. There were also Digimon figure sets released for the Digimon anime Data Squad, which is not really known by very many people at all, even Digimon fans. It was the 5th and final anime released in the early 2000s, and it featured 4 different sets of Digimon figures with the starters of the main characters, and then there was also a 5th set which never saw release, which featured Kamemon, Kamemon, and a few other different Digimon that there's only one image I've ever found online of these Digimon figures. So these ones are even more rare because I don't think they ever even made it to production. So who knows their actual values? I also want to put the call out there. If you know anything about these technically 4 lost Digimon minifigure sets, please contact me and let me know. I really want to build out a database eventually to have all of these Digimon figures photographed and as much information as possible so we can save the legacy of these Digimon minifigures. And if you guys have enjoyed this video and maybe are just getting back into Digimon, be sure to check out my other Digimon related content. And until the next video, guys, peace out.